Now, when I've done this session previously, the next demo that I've done was to create a Docker file that set up a Linux image with all of the necessary dependencies and everything needed to run Delphi Linux applications, including PAServer, so that you could deploy from within the IDE. Well, I want to do the same thing now, but Embarcadero have made it really easy now. In the 10.3.3 release, they have also published some Docker images to make working with a few different parts of Delphi easier. So now, rather than going through and showing you how to build a PAServer Linux Docker image, I'm actually just going to show you how to use the ones that Embarcadero have published on Docker Hub. So if we come over to Docker Hub and search for PAServer, we'll see a couple in here, but here's one called RAD Studio PAServer. And so these are the Embarcadero images that they've created. And that goes in here. It tells you how to run the image. Actually, let me go back. There's actually, if we do a search for, if we click into RAD Studio, we should see that there's three images currently that they've published on Docker Hub. These two are RAD Server Linux images. One has RAD Server, all the RAD Server sort of dependencies and packages, plus Apache loaded up, but it expects to connect to a remote Interbase database. If you're not aware, RAD Server uses Interbase for its licensing and for its users and those sorts of stuff. You don't have to use Interbase for your data. You can connect to whatever you like. But this one is basically a Linux package, a Linux image that has Apache with all of the RAD Server necessary stuff. This is kind of the same, but it also includes Interbase in that one image. And then the third one that they've published is this PAServer image. So it's nothing to do with RAD Server. It's just Linux, all of the Delphi Linux dependencies plus PAServer loaded up and ready to go. Now, if you've ever used the Delphi Linux support, I remember when it first came out and I was trying to set up a VM with a Linux image in it so that I could do some testing with it and play with it. I remember in the end I had to basically watch, Craig Chapman published about a 1 hour or 1 hour plus video on how to set up Linux to support Delphi for Linux binaries. And so I was basically walking through, watching that and pausing it and doing what he did. So it took, this 1 hour video took probably around 2 hours or whatever to go up and set up this VM. Well, now you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is we'll copy this Docker run command. I better copy the whole thing. And we'll come back out to the command line. We'll paste it in, but we'll go through and it needs us to put in a few values. But now, given what we've done, all of these things should make sense. So there's a Docker run command. This is actually old style. This will still work, but the new style is to say Docker container run. But Docker run would have still worked. Minus IT, so it's going to be interactive. Minus E, remember, we're overloading environment variables. So this one is going to be the password that PAServer expects. So I'll just set that to something super secret. Minus P, so we're mapping some ports here. So PAServer listens on, inside the container, it's going to be listening on 64211, but we'll set it up to listen to something on the local machine, which I'll just make the same. Otherwise I won't remember. Now this image actually does something a little bit tricky, which we'll talk a bit more about when I talk about GUI applications and Docker. But basically they've set up this Broadway D server so that you can actually use this for a GUI Linux application and access the user interface through a web browser. So I don't want to go too much into Broadway D. I think either Marco or Jim did a a video around the 10.3.3 launch on how to use Broadway D to use a browser to interact with your Delphi Linux GUI applications. Yeah, but for now, basically, I'll just tell it that I'll map that to port 8082, and then lastly, the name of the image that we're going to run is RAD Studio /PAServer, and in this case, it's the 10.3.3 version. Yeah. So if I run that, okay, PAServer starts up. I can do the commands to see what things are available to me. Yeah, but now that's it. I don't have to go in and configure a Linux VM and do all of that stuff that Craig spent an hour doing in his video. If I now just come into the IDE and I'll do something not terribly interesting, because I just want to show it's more about the Docker part than the actual Delphi part. But I've just created a console application. I'll just do a write line. I don't know, hello from Delphi in a Docker container. Woohoo. Could have done hello world, but whatever. This is currently set up as a target platform of Windows. Let me add Linux. Linux 64-bit. Okay. Oh yeah, it's already stood up. If you have a look, it's already found my Linux Docker profile. But if I have a look at that, just to show you what it's set up to do. Linux Docker, it's set up Linux 64-bit. Host name is just the IP address of my Mac, my MacBook. Yeah, because remember, my Docker container is running on my MacBook, and it shares the IP address of whatever it's running on. Its port number is 64211, which was the port that I mapped it to. I'll just make sure that the password is right. Foobar, super secret. Test the connection. Awesome. It can see PAServer. So we'll just save that. And now, well, it's kind of boring. It's so easy. You just can run it. F9 it. If we jump back out here, we should be able to see hello from Delphi in a Docker container. Now, granted, that's not super exciting. The point is, it's not exciting. It's boring. That's great. Last time I tried to do this from scratch with a VM, it was anything but boring. It was, if I had hair, I'd be tearing it out. Yeah. This being boring is a good thing, trust me. You can find excitement in lots of other places. You don't look for excitement in trying to deploy your application to Linux. Yeah.